So lesson 4 this week is discipline is love. And it almost seems like those words are a contradiction in terms. But the reality is, we were talking about this before we went live. TC and I saw this initially as there's self-discipline and then there's God's discipline. TC, tell our viewers kind of what our thoughts were on that particular point.
That was a great point when we were talking, Donna, about self-discipline and God's discipline. And the baseline for that is structure, right? So as human beings, we crave having some structure in our life. Even if we're spontaneous like I can be, we crave a sense of structure. Now, that's also true for our businesses, right? If you're running a business, you're managing a business, you're in charge of something, there's a certain amount of structure that has to be in place in order for you to be successful, in order for there to be order, right? So that you can be successful. And there are a couple of ways that we can operate within the structure that's required to be successful. One is to do those things that we know that we should be doing. That's the self-discipline, right? There's a set number of things that you know you need to do to be successful in your business, your career, your life. And if you do those things, there are rewards or results for doing those things. Now, Donna, we talked about this. Sometimes we want the rewards and the results that happen on our time. It doesn't always happen like that, right? Sometimes the results, the rewards happen in God's time. But when you do those things you know you should be doing, there is a result for that. That's our self-discipline, doing those things. Now, sometimes, because we're human, imperfect beings, we don't do those things that we should do. And when we don't do the things that we should do as believers, God gives us an opportunity to course correct. But sometimes that comes through the consequences of making a decision to not do those things that we should do. And that's where the God discipline comes into effect, right? So either self-discipline, we do it because we know we should be doing it, or we don't do it and there's a consequence. And Donna, if you want to jump in, we talked about there are lessons in the consequences that God helps us.
Yeah. And the reality is, the consequences can come in so many different ways. It can be a missed opportunity. It can be a situation going completely off the rails. It could be not closing the sale you needed. So those consequences, which I agree I see as God's discipline, I think the next phase of our discipline is to take those consequences and turn them into lessons.
Yes.
And I think that when we can look at each situation and say, okay, what is it that God is trying to tell me here? What is it that God is trying to teach me here? Let me get quiet. Let me get still. Let me not be filled with that anxiety that comes very often with consequences. So it's pushing through the anxiety and getting to the clarity and the connectedness, so that you can determine, okay, what am I supposed to learn here? So for me, when I have a consequence and I need to get connected and say, okay, God, what is it you want me to do? There's two things. It's what do you want me to do from this point forward in this situation? But equally, as a business owner, I think the best thing I can do is say, okay, what can I do to prevent this from happening again?
Yeah.
Is there something I need to do differently? Is there something my team needs to do differently? How do I manage expectations? How do I communicate better? So I think as Christian business owners, for me, I don't have a hard time with that. And I'm sure that's because I've been doing it for so long, it's gotten easier. But I'm okay with failing and then learning from it. And I guess because I've been in business for so long, I think a lot of what we talk about through these lessons, we're building muscles.
Yes.
We're building muscles. There's different kinds of muscles that we build. And learning to get up from a consequence or get up from something that didn't go the way you wanted it to, That's a very powerful skill and a very powerful muscle to build.